Hi everyone, so this is our second lesson of B5 and this is all about communicable diseases. And so remember, a communicable disease is a disease that can be passed on from one infected person to another, and communicable diseases are caused by pathogens. Okay, now you need to be able to define the term pathogen. So a pathogen, if you ever are asked, is a microorganism that causes disease. Now we will never refer to them as germs, okay? So it's a little bit like when people say the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. No, I never want to say the word germs, alright? A pathogen is a microorganism that causes disease. So there are 4 pathogens that you need to know about. We have bacteria, viruses, fungi and protists. Now you've met these before when we did classification. So we said fungi and protists are an example of one of the 5 kingdoms that organisms are split up into, and so are bacteria, prokaryotes. Okay, so hopefully linking it back to B4, we can think about what we know about these in terms of classification. And also B1 in terms of cells, we know that how these bacterial cells are structured, that they're prokaryotic. So if you forgot about those, it might be worth going back and having a little look. So first of all, we have to look at examples of diseases that are caused by these pathogens. So the first one we're going to look at is bacteria. Okay, now there are 2 examples on your spec of diseases that are caused by bacteria. First of all, we have cholera. Now, cholera is the disease, okay? The bacteria that causes cholera is known as Vibrio cholerae. Now, you can see there I've drawn a little water droplet, and this one is to show it's dirty, unclean, unsanitized water. That's where you would find this bacteria living. So if somebody drinks contaminated water, they will get symptoms, the main one being diarrhea. So what happens is if they are infected, they'll feel really, really poorly, and it's all because they have drank water and put this bacterium in their body. So how we can prevent that is we can make sure that people have access to clean, sterilised water, but also giving them the facilities to sterilise it. So we're mainly thinking of this happening in less economically developed countries. So that's your first example. Your second example is tuberculosis. Now again, tuberculosis, or TB, is the disease. The bacteria that causes it is Mycobacterium tuberculosis. Okay, so that's bacteria, that's the disease. So you can see by the little picture, that is a disease that infects the lungs, and it causes people to have a really nasty cough and also have lung damage as well. This one is spread by droplets in the air. So when somebody coughs and they expel those saliva droplets, the TB will be found in those, and it can actually kind of travel in the air, and it's then inhaled by somebody that's uninfected, and that's how it spreads. So when that person inhales those droplets, it'll put the TB in their own lungs, okay? And how we can prevent that, basically, infected individuals should avoid crowded places. So it's a little bit like how they are avoiding the spread of coronavirus at the moment. So stopping people getting out and about so that they're not close proximity to people, so they can't be coughing and sneezing and putting those droplets in the air to be breathed in. We can also make sure that they practice good hygiene, and also their home is well ventilated, so that we make sure that any droplets that they do breathe out into the surroundings, they're taken away, so having windows open and things like that. Okay, so that's bacteria. Then we have viruses. Now just before we have a look at our examples of viruses, I just want to take this opportunity to remind you what a virus is and what it looks like. So viruses, remember, they are not classed as living organisms, and they need a host to survive. So again, very topical at the moment with having coronavirus at the minute. A virus particle is literally just kind of an envelope with some little proteins on the outside, and then it has its genetic material inside. Now when we look at virus life cycles, you'll see exactly how a virus reproduces. But just so you remember, it's not living, it's not in any of those kingdoms, it's actually a parasite, it needs a host to survive. So the two examples we need to look at are HIV and Ebola. So starting with HIV here, HIV is the virus itself. So it stands for Human Immunodeficiency Virus, which is just there. Human Immunodeficiency Virus. And it's called that because it attacks lymphocytes. It attacks the white blood cells of your immune system and stops them from functioning properly. So what it does, because of that, because it attacks your lymphocytes, they are destroyed. So your immune system is really, really weakened by this HIV virus. It leads to a disease eventually, which is AIDS, okay? So the virus itself is HIV. If it has a big enough effect on the body, that person will develop AIDS. So how it's spread is in blood. So if people are donating blood, they have to make sure that they are clear of HIV so they don't infect another person, and sexual contact as well. So in bodily fluids, not saliva, but in blood and sexual fluids and things like that. So that's HIV. Ebola causes hemorrhagic fever. So basically that means that you've got a really high fever, you've got a high temperature, and you're bleeding a lot as well. And again, Ebola is spread in bodily fluids, but this time it is things like saliva. So what you've got to do with somebody with Ebola is make sure that they are isolated completely. So people that have to go in and treat them have to have full body cover, so big suits and things on, gloves, etc. They can't come into contact with anybody else, and also sterilising anything that they've came into contact with. Okay, so that's your two examples of a virus. So if we go back to our little list of pathogens, we have got bacteria, viruses, and then the next one was fungi. Okay, now the only example of a disease caused by a fungus that you need to know about is actually a disease that infects plants. So it is cholera ash dieback. So that is the disease, that's the fungus, and it basically causes trees to lose their leaves, okay? And they end up having kind of wounds, which are known as lesions on the bark. So you can see here, there's a damaged leaf, it's been lost from that tree there, and the actual fungus, the cholera ash dieback fungus, is carried in the air by the wind. So again, like in those droplets, a little bit like TB. So it's blown from one ash tree to another, and then it infects the leaves, okay? How this can be prevented is removing an infected tree from a particular space so that it doesn't spread to the other ones, and then planting a new species, or stopping importation of these ash trees, because that's the only tree that this infects, okay? So that's the only example of a disease you need to know caused by a fungus. Then, finally, your last category of pathogen is protists. So the disease that you need to know about for protists is malaria. Now, the amazing drone there is supposed to be a mosquito. I know you love them, so not mosquitoes, the drones. But there we go, so you can see there, basically malaria is a disease that's caused by a protist. And that protist is carried from person to person by mosquitoes. Now, when a mosquito is able to do that, when it's able to carry a disease without being infected itself, we call it a vector, which is just there. So it acts as a vector. So when it kind of bites somebody and takes up some of their blood, they will carry up the protist inside the mosquito, and then without being infected themselves, they will buzz off, travel off, land on somebody else, and inject that protist into their blood. So that's how it's spread. What it does when it's inside the body, it damages red blood cells and also the liver. And how we're going to stop that is using mosquito nets and also insect repellents. So in order to stop the spread of the malaria, we're stopping these mosquitoes getting access to biting anybody. Okay, So there you have your 4 examples of pathogens: bacteria, viruses, fungi and protists, and an example or 2 of diseases that EdXL want you to know about for each. Just to finish off, we are going to have a quick look at sexually transmitted infections, or STIs or STDs. And there are 2 that you need to know about. So we've got chlamydia and HIV. Now, we've already met HIV before when we looked at viruses. So again, it's viral and leads to that AIDS immunodeficiency disease. Chlamydia is a bacterial infection, and what that can lead to is men and women both becoming infertile, so meaning that they can't have children. So you need to know how STIs are spread, so that is through sexual contact, and also prevented and treated. So to prevent spread of STIs, screening is very important. So that's somebody going to the sexual health clinic and seeing if they actually have the sexual disease itself. Or also using contraception. Now, you have to be, again, specific in your exam question and say that it is a physical barrier, which will be a condom. So it has to physically stop the bodily fluids mixing to prevent the spread of these STIs. How you can treat it? Well, chlamydia is a bacterial infection, so we can use antibiotics. And HIV, currently there is no cure for HIV, but there is medicine to help keep that immune system strong. Just before we go, part of your spec actually says you need to know why having one disease can lead to the development of other diseases, and that is where a really good example of why HIV is so dangerous. Now, the reason why is because obviously if HIV is attacking your immune system and attacking your lymphocytes, if you get infected by something else, you're not going to have the defences, you're not going to have your lymphocytes being able to make those antibodies because they'll not be there, they'll have all been destroyed by HIV. So what you need to just make sure you're happy in linking why, if you've got one disease, then you're more likely to get another. And then that's usually why people who have HIV die of AIDS, because they actually get other diseases that they can't fight off as well as somebody that has a working immune system has. Okay, so that is all of our communicable diseases and pathogens. Remember, any questions, pop them in the comments below.